And I used to think like, oh, Tony Robbins, like that guru guy, walk on coals is so cheesy. But when you're in that place of desperation and fear, um, you're usually a little more open, hopefully, to learning. So I came across a Tony Robbins book, Awaken the Giant Within. And one of the things he's mentioned in there was, if you don't like the answer, ask a better question. And that was the first epiphany I had about myself. Was I was asking myself a lot of really negative questions. If I had a bad cold call, naturally I'd be like, what is wrong with that person? Why are they a jerk? Oh my God, why am I so bad at my job? Again, what happens is then your brain starts answering, oh well, because they're having a bad day too, because you're bad on the phone, because you're not good at your job, you can't do this, you don't have the skills, your parents were right, what's wrong with you? And you go down this spiral that's so negative. And I didn't realize that until I read the Tony Robbins book. And I realized, I'm like, crap, huh? Well, if I don't like those answers, how can I ask better questions?
Welcome to the Mindset Hackers podcast, where we will help you level up both personally and professionally. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. Now, let's get going. What is up, Mindset Hackers? Thank you so much for joining me here today. I am absolutely lit about the guest that I have today. He is a sales and B2B legend who has helped hundreds, if not thousands, of account executives become absolute sales superstars. He recently released a book called Six Figure Sales Secrets, and in just a few days, he hit #1 on the Amazon's bestsellers list for 9 different business categories, selling over 6,200 copies and ranked number 38 out of 44 million books on the platform. We have so many interests in common: sales and marketing, coaching, mindset, personal development, and the one I love most is mastery. Marcus Chan, it is such an honor to have you on my podcast again. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am so good, man. It's it's almost like a relief because the book has launched. It's been over a week now, so it's like, whoo, which feels amazing, right? So I feel absolutely blessed that we've sold so many copies, and did some pretty cool things in the book. But the journey is just beginning, my man. So I'm excited to chat with you more about it.
This is great. I noticed that you were talking about starting this project in March. I mean, some people take years and years to put a book together. And I know this has been spinning in your head for quite a while, but it's pretty impressive to see that how much you've done in just like the 6 months that it's been. Absolutely incredible, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's funny because yeah, you're spot because you see the whole picture. But when I think about writing a book or doing something like this, most people only see just that small percentage. Like, oh, he did a book in like 5 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever. That's incredible. But what a lot of people don't realize is it's been in my head for 15 years, right? So I've been in the trenches doing what's in the book, figuring it out. So all I had to do is basically put it on a Google Doc, and that's when it started coming to fruition. So I think that's what I call the iceberg principle. It's like that 2% of time you see is what you see right now, but it took 98% of below that surface of work to get to this point.
Absolutely. That's really what I wanted to dive into today is some of the stuff that you don't see behind the scenes. And it was really nice because I really appreciate you sending me an advanced reader copy. And I was out with my kids to Disneyland. I left everything at home, but I did bring the book to read, and so many great nuggets in there. And you can tell that you just are an absolute master of your profession. But the thing that I found that was so cool about this book is it's not limited just to people who are in sales. There are so many principles that apply in so many different areas. And I wanted to start off this conversation by asking you to tell a little bit about a story of your brutal first start into sales. And last time I had you on the podcast was probably in September of last year when I was first getting going. And it was really cool because you were telling me how you were living a life where you're working for your parents, and you're telling me about on a Sunday night you're working for 16 hours in this hot kitchen in California, and you're just like, there's got to be something better out there. And then you made the shift. You were not handed all this on a plate. You've had some massive success in your life, but I truly believe that you have cultivated the personality that was able to be the equivalent of that lifestyle. But let's start off with this. Okay, so you decided you wanted to get into sales because sales is an arena where you can massively influence your income and your compensation. But when you first started, it wasn't easy going, right? Tell me a little bit more about what you mentioned in the book about that first month or so when you were cutting your teeth, you're trying to get appointments. What was that like?
Yeah, well, it was a wake-up call, first off. When I got started in sales, had always equated success to being able to work hard. So, I was not a stranger to hard work. I was used to working hard. I'm like, this is how it's done. I'll be really great at sales. People have told me I'd probably be good at sales. So I'm like, I'll probably be pretty good. And so when I first got started, I think similar to a lot of people in B2B sales, there wasn't much direction, much support, no real training. I was given a manual written by people who had never done the job before. So that was interesting. And I remember my very first day, like in the field, I asked my boss what to do. He said, hey, I want you to go out there, Marcus. I want you to go knock on doors, like physically walk into businesses, see if you can book meetings or close deals. I'm like, okay. Didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do, definitely scared out of my mind. So he gave me a stack of like brochures with his business cards on it because mine weren't even ordered yet. So I had a stack of his brochures, his business cards on there, and I asked him how many doors should I go knock on? He said, knock on at least 30. I'm like, okay, it's a good like benchmark. I like numbers to work towards. So I said, okay, cool. That first day, I walked into over 60 businesses by foot. And I wish I could say I closed the deal. I was amazing at it. The truth is after walking into 60 businesses, 0 interest generated, 0 means booked, 0 closed deals. I'm like, that's crazy. Went to my boss. He said, okay, like go back out again the next day. All right. Next day, did again, different part of the street, different part of my territory. Same result. Over 60 new businesses now. Again, 0 interest, 0 means booked, 0 closed deals. And I'm starting to freak out a little bit because I'm not great at math, but if you walk into 120 businesses or have 120 conversations and you can't convert even one, that's less than a 1% conversion rate. And I'm like, that sounds crazy to me. Like, okay, I went to my boss. I'm like, hey, what should I do next? He's like, call them. I'm like, what? Call them? Okay, I'll call them. So that day, I grabbed all the cards, started calling every single one. And again, like trying to book me and trying to like close some sort of deal, nothing. So at this point now, like literally, I had over 240 plus touches and not a single appointment booked, not a single deal closed, no interest, nothing. So I started to freak out a little bit because I'm like, crap, like this is way harder than I expected. Like, how is it possible that I can't, like, out of that many touches, not even a 1% conversion? It made 0 sense to me. So at that point, I really didn't think I was going to make it in sales. And that was pretty scary for me because the economy is starting to tank as well. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, if I quit, it's going to be hard to get a job. But if I do quit, what am I going to do anyways? I had no idea, So at this point, there's a lot of self-doubt, a lot of fear. But also on top of that, with my parents, they had told me not to take this job. And there was just like feeling in my gut where like my parents were right. And at that point, I'm like, what am I going to do? I got to figure it out. Right. So fortunately, eventually I figured it out, but that was my first week in sales, definitely challenging. And I wish I could say the next week I got better, but it's probably over 2 months time. Eventually I figured it out and then I started having success after 2 months, but it was like 8 weeks of pure misery.
I can connect to that. Here's what's interesting is in my sales organization, one of the top reps who she's probably going to be closing in on $1 million this year in income, but she had that same rough start. Some of the best salespeople come from that type of a start where it's a little bit rocky in the beginning. But you mentioned something in the book that was a real game changer for you. One was a quote by Jim Rohn. I think he said, you mentioned in your book that he said, you can work hard at your job versus work hard at your life. But a shift happened for you, and it was around asking better questions. And later on in the book, which is really cool, is, first you start asking better questions for yourself. But then later, as you got into sales, you realized it wasn't about pitching people, but asking them better questions that helped them reveal what they needed. Tell me about the power of asking better questions, first on a personal note, and then how do you implement that in sales?
Great question. So, early on, one of the things that I was running into, and I didn't even realize this, is only because I was struggling and I was blaming the world, really. Hey, why is the economy bad? Why do I have bad territory? Why do I have bad prospects? Why do I have a bad boss? Why is my company giving me no support? Why is marketing giving me 0 leads? It was very much everyone else is wrong. And I remember, especially after our first week, my wife, now girlfriend at the time, and I was complaining to her about everything. And she's like, Marcus, why don't you get some books to the library? And this is before like LinkedIn was what it is today. YouTube was still really in its infancy. There wasn't really a lot of available sales resources out there outside of books, and conferences. So I went to the library. I'm like, that makes sense. Went to the library, started getting sales books. Now, most of the stuff didn't really help me that much, but what was interesting was that's also when I first stumbled across Tony Robbins. And I used to think like, oh, Tony Robbins, like that guru guy, walk on coals is so cheesy. But when you're in that place of desperation and fear, you're usually a little more open, hopefully, to learning. So I came across a Tony Robbins book, Awaken the Giant Within. And one of the things he's mentioned in there was, if you don't like the answer, ask a better question. And that was the first epiphany I had about myself. Was I was asking myself a lot of really negative questions. If I had a bad cold call, naturally I'd be like, what is wrong with that person? Why are they a jerk? Oh my God, why am I so bad at my job? Again, what happens is then your brain starts answering, oh, well, because they're having a bad day too, because you're bad on the phone, because you're not good at your job. You can't do this. You don't have the skills. Your parents were right. What's wrong with you? And you go down this spiral that's so negative. And I didn't realize that until I read the Tony Robbins book. And I realized, I'm like, crap. Well, if I don't like those answers, how can I ask better questions? So when I started having bad cold calls, I started asking myself questions like, well, what can I learn about this? What can I learn from this? How can I adjust my tonality to get a better response? How can I adjust how I speak to them? How can I adjust my approach? And I started to challenge myself, if you will, in all these different scenarios. It got to the point where early on, when I was still kind of trying to figure out these questions, I literally had a Post-it note, those questions written out, taped under my monitor. So that cold call was tough. I look at it. Look at those questions. If I was in the field on an appointment, I got on an appointment, it went terrible because I did a terrible job, is on my visor. Flipped it down. I look at those questions again and answer them out loud. So I was forcing myself to ask myself better questions. And when you start doing that, it becomes such a big mental shift. So for example, once my day was over, and instead of beating myself up, it was like, all right, what's one thing I learned from today? Well, I learned I need to have a better planned day because I definitely drove around traffic too much. So what am I going to do differently now? I'm going to plan better. How will I plan better? So I started teaching myself how to challenge myself to a whole new level. And that was really interesting because it forced me to think differently. It forced me to be solution-oriented versus problem-focused. And when you start asking these different questions, it changes how you start doing things. And then as I started to progress into a little bit deeper into my sales career, still early on, still struggling, I remember one of the next epiphanies I had was I actually was still struggling, and I went to go see a doctor for like a physical, and my blood pressure was up. Okay, I was stressed. I gained a little bit of weight, right? This is like my first job out of college, and I remember just like talking to my doctor, and by the end of the conversation, I basically committed to her that I was going to eat better and work out more. And I was pretty excited about it. I'm like, I remember like leaving. I'm like, how did she convince me of that? Like, how did she sell me that I basically need to change these habits? Because the problem was I was still eating like I was in college, right? But the activity is not the same level, right? And my stress levels were very, very different. I'm like, how did she convince me to do this? And then I thought, she did not convince me. All she did was ask me questions. She asked me questions to the point where I came to my own conclusion, and I was sold on the idea before she even told me the solution. And then I said, what if I could apply those same principles to my own sales process? Because when I started really thinking about this, you realize pretty quickly when you go see the doctor, everything's questions based. When you book the appointment, when you go in first, they're going to have you fill out a questionnaire by hand, or they might send to you in advance. You fill out a questionnaire. Then when you have your appointment, you go to the appointment, you don't see a doctor first, you see the nurse first. The nurse brings you in, asks you more questions first. Okay. Then the doctor comes in. Doctor then asks you more questions. And then the very last few minutes, they're like, okay, this is what we recommend based on what we just uncovered. And they're actually solving the root issue, the root cause. And we're more open to it. So if we can apply the same concept to sales, it's amazing how we could just close more as a result. But those are some of the major epiphanies I realized about how powerful questions really are as part of your sales process.
I believe that. I love that you do that too. It just opens you up to a complete growth mindset.
That's
The
right.
other thing that I think is really cool is the diagnose and prescribe the solution in
Mhm.
sales. It's much different than a lot of people think about sales. I think a lot of times, especially because you're kind of in the coaching world and sales world.
That's
But
right.
one thing I find a lot with coaches is there's a fear of selling, and
Mhm.
that's the lifeline of any entrepreneurship or coaching business, is the ability to be able to sell. And I
Mhm.
think that that can be a big blind spot too, is if you're afraid to sell. What I see a lot of people doing is they want to take action, so they bulk up on the learning part, but they're avoiding the selling part because they
That's
think
right.
selling is talking somebody into something. Whereas what you're describing is ask a question, prescribe a solution. You allow them, you hold space for them to come up with the answers that they probably know inside of themselves.
Oh yeah. Well, and this is also I believe a big shift that salespeople have to have, and also coaches, consultants, etc. Is you must have you must be in your mind, you must have zero doubt about your solution. You must be 100% certain your solution can solve their problem, and the prospect, if they're qualified, needs your solution. When you have that type of mental belief and mindset, you're not actually selling, you're serving. And especially when I think about, if you sell, it doesn't even matter what you sell. Like, I know for me, like I sell sales coaching service, and yes, it's sales coaching. But what happens is when people are in my program, is they also become the best version of themselves. So I know their lives will change because they'll become a better spouse, husband, mother, parents, human being, leader in their own life. And I know that with there's 100% conviction there. So if they're qualified and they don't end up enrolling, I'm shocked. I can't comprehend it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's no different as a doctor with a patient. If the doctor knows a patient is very sick, they're not going to comprehend if that patient does not want to take the prescribed medication, surgery, or whatever it's going to be. They're mentally shocked. They cannot comprehend it. And I believe salespeople and consultants and coaches have to have the same mindset as well. And if you don't walk in that mindset, then you're going to feel like you're being pushy. But when you're truly serving, you know it's in the best interest of them.
Absolutely. How do you get sales reps or entrepreneurs, coaches to build that, or maybe even in your own experience? I remember last time we talked, you had a runway of when you were going to depart sales and step into this new world of entrepreneurship. But for somebody who's like on the earlier part of that, maybe they're just getting going in sales, maybe they've just quit their job and they started a coaching business, and that belief isn't quite there yet. And they don't have that.
Mhm.
I call that selling with conviction.
That's right.
And you're right, it is an absolute transformation. But what are some ways that you help the people that you coach get that confidence and build that belief system inside of themselves?
Cool. So I'm gonna divide into like two categories, right? Because I think the benefit of a salesperson is if they're joining an organization that's been around for a while, they probably have customers, which means they probably have case studies, testimonials, proof. They could talk to customers, etc. So that's why actually I believe the first week should be about indoctrination of belief. It should be about going in there, like reading all the case studies, watching all the videos, reading all the testimonials, talking to current happy customers and clients, and being able to see not just the tangible benefit, but what are the big outcomes they achieve because of the solution. That's like number one. Because if you can do that up front, whatever you're selling doesn't really matter as much, as long as you know it can solve the problem. It's kind of like a diet. Pretty much majority diets work out there. They really do, right? They all pretty much kind of work to a certain extent, right? So, but if you are, say you sell keto, a keto diet, then, well, if you could talk to people, like 15 people that have done the keto diet, they lost lots of weight and they're in the best shape, they're super confident. Now you're gonna believe in keto. So now you can really sell. But the details of the keto diet does not matter as much as you believe in the transformation. So in terms of a salesperson, that's probably the easiest way is number one, go out there, just read case studies, testimonials, indoctrinate yourself as fast as possible. If you're an individual starting your own coaching business, it depends because I'll say if number one, if you have already been serving that ideal customer profile, if you've already been serving them already, you probably have results of some sort. And you may need to remind yourself of that. That might be as simple as you doing the kind of same thing. Okay. Now, if you do not have, if you're going to sell to a whole new market, a whole new industry, and you have a new concept, a new offer that you want to sell to them, and you're not sure about yourself yet, the first thing I would do is I would go and get some results for them, right? This could be through a beta program. This can be through a beta launch, but you bring some people in early on and you get them results. So let me give you an example. So when I started, before I started my business, and I was in corporate America, and I remember, I did this in reverse. I shouldn't have done it this way, but I'll tell you anyways. But it took 2 years for me to build an online course out. So I'm going to create a B2B sales course from 2017 to 2019. It took me 2 years to build. Like I was still working full time. And then I built it out, and I was like, this sounds really cool, but will it work? Like, will people get results from it? Because I'm not they're not working for me. They're gonna be all around the world. So I wasn't really I was confident they work for me and my company. I could help get them results. But outside of that, could they watch an online course get results? I don't know. I was worried, but I'm like, screw it. Let's launch it anyways. Launch it anyways, right? People started buying. Strangers on the internet. Strangers around the world. And I was like, I was say probably the first month was just really scary, because I'm like, am I gonna get refunds? Are people gonna get results? Am I full of crap? Maybe I got lucky in my past. Maybe I'm only good in this one industry that I'm in, right? I don't know. And then I remember I started reaching out to people that had bought the program. It was even part of the emails. I would just manually reach out. Hey, how's everything going? What are your thoughts? And just started getting amazing feedback. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like, oh, I'm booking more meetings. Oh, I'm closing more deals. I'm like, oh, wow. So it's kind of like each response back started building my confidence up. And I started having people that didn't respond early on. They started responding to me or messaging me, hey, do you do one-on-one coaching? And that was like, wow, this works. So that was almost like a beta launch, right? So I think it's important to get those type of results. And then later on, when I was refining the program, I decided to do a relaunch of another beta. Did that, got a group of, I think we had 15 or 20 people in our first beta relaunch. And again, worked directly with them and got them crazy results. And that really built my confidence up to know this works. I can really deliver transformation for them. So I think early on, unless you're really strapped for cash, I wouldn't focus on the cash necessarily unless you're in a bad spot, but I'll focus on the impact. If you can over deliver up front, that way on the back end's gonna help you later on. You'll get more testimonials, more case studies. You'll feel really good. They'll feel really good. And they'll be some of your biggest fans because they're part of that beta group too.
I love that. I'm just I try to use this a lot, or people say that when they think of me, they think about over delivering, because I'm so focused on that rather than the coin up front, because that's what builds your brand. If you become known for that, that stuff can be a tailwind for you for a long time. Right. I've got some fun questions for you around marketing, sales, branding, because you do so well around this. First of all, you're known for sales, but I see you as an absolute genius in both marketing and branding, and a very well-defined niche. And a lot of people struggle with understanding the difference. Can you break down, how would you describe the difference between sales, branding, and marketing?
Good question. So when I look at I look at branding and marketing kind of go together in my opinion. And then sales is a whole different beast. It's almost like I look at branding and marketing brings people to kind of towards you. It's like attraction marketing. And you can brand yourself in certain ways, and marketing you can market many different ways, but I'll break down my journey. So I knew when I left my corporate job, it didn't matter about my track record. People didn't care. No one cared about how many President's Club. No one cared how much I made. No one really cared about that. All they want to know is, are you of value right now to me? So I'm like, okay, so from a branding perspective, the number one thing I want to establish immediately is I'm an authority in the space. That's number one. I'm like, that was my number one goal. I'm like, number one, year one, branding authority, right? Which meant marketing had tied to that as well. So when I understood that, I spent a lot of my first year establishing domain authority. I think I was on probably 100+ podcasts that year, my first year. And I don't know how many posts I put. I wrote literally thousands and thousands of words of posts and created hours and hours of content nonstop. Every single day I would push out, right? Because I was establishing domain authority, and also I was branding myself as I know what I'm talking about. So when it starts happening as a result of that, because it was so clear, I'm like, who am I going after? How do they want them to perceive me? So, and you can establish domain authority by purely giving value. When people see you actually know what you're talking about, it cuts right through the noise, right? So I wasn't going for a virality. I was going for domain authority. Like people are like, this dude knows what he's talking about. So I started doing that early on as well. I also want to establish that my stuff gets results. So it's not just that I know what I'm talking about, that my stuff gets results. So I also why I established myself as a guy who has the most insane amount of social proof. So and you've seen it, right? So I'm like, that's a fast way. I mean, Robert
I love
Cialdini,
that. I love seeing your testimonials. And
right?
I'm sure that you ask for them too. You don't just wait for them to show up, but I love that.
It's
Domain
very
authority too. That's a brilliant. I
ev-
never even heard that.
everything is very, very intentional, right? Because here's the thing: when you read the book, Robert Cialdini's book Influence, he talks about social proof is one of the fastest ways to gain trust and credibility for people to get influence because they see a desired result by somebody else, and that means, oh, and who did it? You did it. You helped them get there, right? You're not the hero; they're the hero. You're the guide to their story, to that prospect, right, or to that testimonial. So I started doing that very consistently. So I had my branding goal, my marketing plan was all designed around that. So like no joke, literally like I think early on I posted 7 times a week is early on first month or first year, 7 times a week, at least pretty much 4 or 5 of them was pure domain authority, tactical, things are going to help with some stories inserted as well, and at least one social proof every single week. So it starts really building, and so people start really seeing that, and that was really key because ultimately, when you can start establishing the branding and the marketing really well, you start having sales at the bottom part of the funnel because not everyone's going to end up closing, right? But they start getting nurtured and all the way down. So as I continue that, what started happening as well because I want to establish that domain brand authority. You start getting reach outs for Yahoo Finance or Forbes or whatever else. So then you start to have these type of features. Then you get recognized by like Salesforce and LinkedIn. So it started bringing people in because it was that domain authority and also like just what I was putting out there. So each time it would stack up. It would stack up. It would stack up. It would stack up. And then I'll leverage social media and the platforms to spread my brand around. So for example, here's a little ninja hack. So like once I got on the Forbes Council, I'm like, cool. Like the mistake I think a lot of people make is like, hey, they're like, oh, cool. I got featured in this. Cool. Definitely very, very cool. They share it once. Awesome. And then nobody sees it again. Okay. So what I do, it's really, really simple. I take that, I share it. Oh, hey, I just got featured in Forbes. Cool. Here it is. I then take that, put it on Facebook, and I create retargeting ads. Anyone who's been to any of my pages now gets hit with my ads, show like just sponsored posts of like, hey, Marcus got featured here, got featured here, got featured here. So now I'm following them everywhere on the internet, right? So this is how you build a domain authority. This is why at the end of the day, that marketing and that branding, it builds an image in their mind. And the sales is actually one of the last pieces of the puzzle, but you need to have both. Or you need to have all three. You can't just have, only the branding and marketing and no sales. You need to have all the above. And if you can do all of them really, really well, it really does help you build a really, really cool business.
Oh, I agree with that. I love seeing your retargeting ads. It's awesome. And it's fun because I'm doing that myself. I can't even believe that. I think like 2 years or a year and a half ago, we talked and you were showing me your hooks and spears and the retargeting stuff. And it was like blowing my mind. I can't even believe that I'm starting to do some of that stuff now, but it's all because of you and you helping me understand that. Okay. Niching. Okay. In your book, and I totally agree with this. The riches are in the niches. And
right.
It's very easy to understand who you serve and how you help them. But so many people get caught up in lack of clarity around their niche. And it makes it sound like they're vague. They don't know who they're helping out. And it kind of sounds too broad. How do you help people refine their niche? Like I know so many people that struggle with clarity around this. What are some tips around honing in your voice and dialing that in? Do you just do most people like jump around until they find it, or what do you usually see when it comes to people becoming weak and vague to very dialed in when it comes to their niche?
So I think a lot of people end up they're very general. You're right, because there might be a fear of, because this is how I felt. I'm like, there's scarcity. Like, oh, is there enough people in this market? What if I sell to all of them? What if this doesn't resonate? Maybe I can go more general. And I believe eventually you should probably have to go a little more general once your audience is big enough. But I think early on, you have to go super, super like niche down. So that way your messaging can really connect. And I find one really simple exercise is you imagine Who is your perfect avatar? Imagine if you were sitting down at coffee with them. They're sitting across from you. Your ideal customer profile. What do they look like? How do they act? What are the demographics, which is the obvious one, but what are the psychographics? What are they scared of? What do they fear the most? What are their burning desires? What are their wants? What do they truly desire? How will it help them? And you start uncovering all these things, and when you can like imagine that single person, like their name, like, you know, if Marcus is my ideal target market, like it's that specific to them. Because then when you write an email, you write a post, you're like, how can I serve this person? How can I serve this person right here? Because that's going to be a lot more impactful. So when you create an offer for them, it becomes really powerful. But on top of that, you can charge it a lot more. So let me give you an example. So let's just say if I have a business where I help people become more organized, right? Like be more organized, be maybe a bit better at planning, scheduling, etc. That's actually a great skill to develop, actually. So if I just create, say, a course, it's like how to get organized. Okay, I could probably sell that for like $97, maybe a couple $100, maybe $497, maybe $997. All right. Okay. How to stay organized as a busy professional. Okay, maybe charge a little more. Maybe with the $997, maybe $1497. Right? Not bad. Or if I said, how to stay organized as a medical sales professional so you can generate $1 million a year. Now that I might be willing to pay $10,000 for, right? Because it's so freaking specific to me if I'm in that specific field. So when you start thinking this way, you can write better copy, you create better products, create better everything else. So for example, my niche is B2B salespeople. Now, naturally, because of how I write copy, I attracted a lot of SaaS reps, a lot of software reps, right? Because of how it's designed. Because number one, I know they have higher comp plans and they're usually more qualified, right? But it's designed for that. Now, I've seen people in the space try to create a sales course. It's so general. It's to everyone, how to be good at B2B sales, how to be good at sales. It's so freaking general, but because I'm specific with everything else, it from the very top to down, it leads to high conversion in every single part of the funnel.
I love that too, because as I mentioned with your book, it applies in so many different areas than just that niche. And
That's right.
Yeah, very strong. You're very strong with that. I wanted to ask you this too. So I met you through LinkedIn. I remember my journey was a little bit later than yours as far as starting on that platform, but it's done wonders for me. And, obviously I try to help people understand what's possible with this. And how I found you was that you were featured in an article that was talking, I think it was like 30 sales and B2B reps talked about their experience with LinkedIn and some of their best practices. Can you tell me how does LinkedIn fit into your business? How has it played a role in what you've created? How did you get started on it? Like, how long have you been using it? What has LinkedIn done for you?
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. So, we'll typically do on LinkedIn, we'll do between 60 to 100K a month off LinkedIn. It's very, very intentional how we utilize the platform because we use it as top of the funnel work for sure. So like generating leads, we do it for booking calls a little bit further than funnel, and we use it for closing deals as well. But we also use it for marketing and branding too. Now, when I started with LinkedIn, it wasn't like, oh, this is where I am today with this, right? That's not how it was. When I started LinkedIn, I had I think 3,000 followers, right? And most of them were just since I had the profile since 2007. So 2007 to 2019 September, about 3,000 followers or connections, and they're a mix of all over, right? Like a lot of people I used to work with at one point or the other, right? People I tried recruiting in the past, and that's what it was. But I saw as a very powerful tool. So number one, I knew if I could optimize it very well, it would hit at the top of Google searches. That's number one. So I'm like, all right, from a Google search perspective, that's really, really powerful. Number two, it's also, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife in how you can utilize the platform. And what I mean by that is your profile by itself is like a landing page. It's like a sales page to convert people, nurture them. So if you optimize it really well, you can generate leads, you can book calls, you can close deals, you can get inbound requests, you can do a lot of really cool things with it, right? But also you can also use it to post content out there, which is amazing. You can use it to find new prospects. You can also use it to do outbound. You could do it. You could send video on there. You could send audio. You could do like text. I mean, it's so diverse in terms of how you can actually engage with your prospects. So we use it for like literally all of the above. I even use the ad platform as well. So I use the ad platform from cold ads, cold traffic. I also use it for retargeting traffic as well. So I use it in like a multifaceted way, but I use it as a way for a lot of the top of funnel work to go all the way down. But then on top of that, the key is I don't keep everything on there. So I think the mistake a lot of people make is they keep, it's like if LinkedIn shuts them down, they're like screwed. Business shuts down. Or if they're on Facebook, same thing, shut down, game over. Instagram, same thing, shut down, game over. So constantly I'm taking people off of LinkedIn and bringing them into my world, right? So, that's true. Like, lead magnets, free trains, etc. I take them to other parts of the platform to get them re-nurtured because YouTube's actually a really great retargeting platform as well. So I'm constantly taking people off that platform from the cold leads, warm leads, and I'm nurturing them all the way through. But it's a really, really powerful tool if you do it right. So it's kind of a long answer, but I use it for like literally all parts of my funnel. So even if, let's just say, for example, even if we get on a call, they do not join one of my programs, not a problem at all. Maybe it's not a good fit, maybe timing, whatever, but still, they're still seeing my content, so they'll still get nurtured, right? But when you do it properly, it's a tool that can really generate you like a new pipeline, nurture current existing pipeline, and close deals for you as well.
That's awesome, because I think a lot of us think of it like, generating traffic, but what you're describing is managing traffic too. Generating traffic is creating content, creating interest, the searches, but then managing it is bringing them into your leads list, to your email marketing, and nurturing that. And another thing too that I love that you brought up is that they might not be ready to buy now, but I'm sure you've had this happen so many times, is someone wasn't ready, but then a year from now or 6 months from now, they are ready. Does that happen a lot to you?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
For people that you least likely think would buy, or have the least amount of resources, end up being probably some of your best clients and having the best results.
They'll see the content nonstop, right? And they'll get nurtured by it. But also, like, I mean, every day I get messages from people like, oh, like they're not even clients. They're literally just consuming free content on LinkedIn. And they're like, dude, I did this. I got a result. Thank you so much. Great. That's awesome. Like not everyone has to pay me to get value. I'm like, that'd be cool, but it's like, it's not a prerequisite, right? So that's why it's like, I love platforms like LinkedIn. I'm also very bullish on YouTube because I know it's a great source for people to get nurtured and then also help them as well. So for example, like I'll bring people to my YouTube channel pretty consistently because that's like some of my most impactful pure value stuff. Like, because right now I think I started my YouTube channel like 3-4 months ago, and I think I have about 60 plus hours of content on there now, right? It's just like pure tactical training, things that people literally could like watch and do and get results, whether or not they want to join my program or not. And that's pretty cool too. But ultimately, kind of something we discussed before, when you just over deliver up front, as a result, there's always going to be a percentage of people that are going to say, I want to work closely with you. And they think of you as a first person.
Oh, that's brilliant. I have one more question for you, Marcus, and then we're going to tell people where to find you on YouTube, and talk about your book for just a second, and then send you off and hopefully enjoy this beautiful day. But you and I both know the quality of having, the tribe, the mentors, coaches. Tell me what that looks like on your end. I know that you and I are not afraid to invest in ourselves, but what does your journey look like? You initially started out grabbing some books from the library. I didn't even know coaching was a real thing until just a few years ago, but since then I've been involved in masterminds and higher level coaching. But Marcus Chan, the high performer, what's behind the scenes as far as your development and your coaching?
Yeah, so key. And I think similar to you, I never trust a coach who doesn't have their own coach, right? Like, it's just like, if you really believe in coaching, you should have your own coach. So I'll talk about, I think this is kind of a good lead in right now. So I've invested a lot into coaches. I've invested well into $250,000 plus. I mean, even just like this year so far, in like, I'm not even counting about the 50K investment I did back in like December for this year. But when I knew I was going to write a book, a good example, here's a good example. So when I knew I was going to write this book right here, okay, this book right, when I knew I was going to write it, I didn't just start like buying a bunch of Udemy courses, okay? And like, nothing wrong with Udemy, but I'm like, here's a $97 course. I'm gonna write a best-selling book because of that, maybe, right? I also understand that I need to have context with content. So when I first put out a post, say, hey, everyone, I'm thinking about writing this book. What do you think? Everyone's like, that sounds great. You should definitely do it. I'm like, oh God, now I have to do it because I committed to myself. I'm like, well, first thing I do, I'm going to get a coach. So I went and got a coach to help me with the book before I wrote anything, before I even got started. Because I'm like, what I didn't want to do was like waste all this time trying to write this book, then get a coach and have a lot of issues. This is actually why I did early on when I started my business. I waited too long. I should have got a coach to begin with, right? So I got a coach, and it was amazing because like I'm like, I don't know where to start. Like I have all these ideas in my head. Like where do I start? She's like, okay, this is how you kind of structure it out. Here's how you want to think about it. And I'm like, oh. It was almost as if I was driving down the freeway with like a really dirty windshield, and she just cleared my windshield. I'm like, got it. So that can start getting to work. And I invested 20K with her. We got the book done in 3 months, right? So like March to like 3 months later, first draft done, right? Could not have done it without her. Like, and she's helping me along. I get stuck, and like I have her read it over. Like, okay, you're missing. You need to have a story here. It's too tactical here. Now it's powerful for me, right? So like, and it's been amazing. And I could not have read this book without her because she was so key, which just helped me get clarity. And sometimes with a coach, like, yes, sometimes they're teaching you things, but sometimes they merely remind you what's most important, and they help cut away all that BS. And she was really powerful, and she taught me new things too. But that really helped me to be able to write this book and make it a bestseller, right? So like, I mean, I'm waiting for prelim numbers, but chances are pretty good we hit Wall Street Journal bestseller list, right? First week, first book, right? But I could have done it without having a good coach. And I share that with you because I think many people, they end up not realizing it, but they end up paying the tax of time, of a trial and error. They want to pay that time tuition of trying to figure it out on their own. And yeah, if you want that, but at the end of the day, you're going to be paying someone. Either you pay with your opportunity cost and your own time, or you pay with money, right? And I'd much rather use money to buy more time, because now in that time of me getting this book done, now I can focus on serving more people. I can focus on selling more of these books, help more people get more impact. I could do so much more. I can build additional products as well on top of this to make it even better, right? So that is a power of having a good coach. But I'm a firm believer in having another coach. And like, before the year end, I'll be investing into a new mastermind coach as well. I mean, I love my current one, which is great, but I'm going to get some new different ideas as well. But ultimately, I'm a firm believer, like, if you want to become the best version of you, the elite always invest in themselves, not just when they become the best of the best. I'm not saying I'm the best of the best, but they start before they get started. They invest before they get started. They invest while they're doing it. They invest while they're at the top. And that's why the best athletes in the world all have coaches. That's why we should all have coaches too.
Absolutely, I agree. I was reading that in your book about the time tax. That's such a good way to put it. You know, the do-it-yourselfers, and a lot of times they'll spend time and money and then come back and still be in the same starting spot. So you have done such an amazing job executing that book. I'm so pumped. I'm so proud of you. I'm so honored to know you. Marcus, what's your new YouTube channel?
All right, cool. You can just literally Google Marcus Chan, and you can find me very, very easily. It's right on there. I think that I can't remember what the URL is. It's like YouTube something. It's something goofy. But look at Marcus Chan, and you'll see I'm one of the top ones on there. And there's like 60 plus videos on there.
That's awesome. And then you've got a lot of free value adds. Is that at sixfiguresalesacademy.com? Did I say that correctly?
You're exactly right. Exactly right. And depending on when you release this podcast, I'm actually because right now you can get this book on Amazon, right? But I'm also releasing a version where you can get a free version sent to you if you pay for shipping and handling, which will be launching in a couple of weeks, depending on when you watch this.
We'll get this out. I promise we'll get this episode out pretty quickly. Where do they get the mail-in version?
Cool. So in terms of the free version, is that right?
The one that they pay for shipping and handling, you get the hard copy.
So I haven't created the link yet, but it will be sixfiguresalesacademy.com/book.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend this holiday with me, jamming out on some of our favorite topics. You have made a huge impact on my life, and I thank you so much. Mindset hackers, I know that this message resonated with you and probably someone that you know. I would appreciate it if you would just click the share button. Send this to somebody who could use this message, somebody who could step it up a little bit when it comes to their mindset, their marketing, their sales, their branding, their niche. We talked about so many good things today. Please share this episode, and don't be afraid to get this book. It is not just for salespeople. There's so many concepts that apply to anybody who wants to level up in life. Thank you so much. I will catch you on the next episode.